Hello, hello. This is video log 10. Yesterday I was in an interesting state, but then I realized I was just in the midst of chaos. That's why the guy that told me that he'd take care of me was kind of on a hiatus. But he came back. Um, he told me to make a card for myself, a card about who I am, or who I want to be. But I'm convincing myself this is who I am now because what's better than now, right? What is better than now in the present and being here? So I decided to do that. I was going through another state of turmoil on my bed. The chaos was right there. It was right in front of me. And I knew under all of this structure, there's this chaos. But the beautiful thing about the human mind is that it can ignore this said chaos if it wants to. It can create these labels, these structures in our heads. So I decided to create more structure for who I am, who I want to be. I guess I will. I have my card. I think I'm going to keep this with me constantly. It's going to be in my pocket every day. I'm going to feel it, and it's going to be a reminder of who I am, because that's all I've had trouble with for years and years, ever since I was, what's the word? Ever since I came into existence, I guess. But anyways, so I am disciplined. I am strong. I'm decisive. I'm happy. I'm grateful. I'm content. I'm calm. I'm level-headed. I'm calculating. I'm intelligent. I'm sharp. I'm witty. I'm humorous. I'm perceptive. A visionary. A leader. Wise and knowledgeable. I'm also virtuous. A stoic, rather. I'm not sure about that part. I have to be a little bit more specific about being virtuous, because you do have to have values. These said values will define the trajectory for the rest of my life. I still have to figure that one out, but I'll get there. But yeah, so this card is going to be a reminder of who I am. And in the back side of the card, I'm going to have a reminder of what I want. I haven't made that yet, but I think I'll do that tonight. Yeah, I've decided to change things in my life. I'm tired of, I used to pretend that this world was cruel to me. I couldn't do anything about it. But I know I can. Because I've decided that this is who I am. And these things on this card can make me a victim of this world. I can't allow it to have control of me. No. I mean, I am gifted with the foresight and awareness of all this stuff that has been happening in the world, and my constant evolution of who I was back then and who I am now. But I've decided to have another rebirth because I said so. Nobody can stop me from this other than myself. So, yeah. So it's interesting. I guess I could talk about my day. I did read my astronomy book for a while. Not really. I mean, sort of. I mean, I was just reading about the different astronomers back in the Hellenistic era, and also the medieval times and the evolution of the idea of astronomy and whatnot. And although not to modern times, I didn't really get there. But then I read the scientific revolution, containing Isaac Newton, Kepler as well, and Tycho Brahe. And in the medieval era, I guess you had Copernicus. Hellenistic area, I guess, had Aristocrates, I think. Um, Aristophanes, of course. He had some interesting ideas. There was also Ptolemy, because they had trouble with the retrograde motion of the planets. They didn't really understand that. So Ptolemy created a epicycle theory, which I think Galileo Galilei, was that him? I think he was the one who debunked it. Not sure if it was Galileo. I missed that part. I remember hearing that in my course in Thomas Nelson. But yeah, so it's one of those. Yeah, so that's really all I did. I took some notes. I also looked at the retrograde motion, and I was trying to put myself into the shoes of the people of the Hellenistic area, and as they were looking in the sky, and how in certain times of the year, the planets would start going back, not going the same motion. Of course, back then, they realized that, they thought it would be they would all go the same direction because they're all circling around Earth. That means it's one direction in the sky. So they must have been really confused when they saw these planets just going back and forth, kind of like an oscillation almost. But as you can see, I drew a diagram, but it's when the Earth passes, of course, and if you look out from, I did a simple situation where the outer shell of the planet beyond Earth, I guess you could think of Mars, you can see it visually as it goes to the left side of the sky as you look up. But that's one side. That's one part of the year. And then 6 months later, in a situation in which, or even a year, in which, so each year, I guess you could think of that state, or you can think of other states, but I'm simplifying it, but when you're on the other side, where it's on the other side of the orbit from Earth, when you look out, it goes to the right side as opposed to the left. So that's why they saw these retrograde motions and whatnot. And it must have been really weird for them because Earth was passing by, and I don't know. They must have been really confused. Like, why are these planets going left and right? I thought they were supposed to be going, one direction in the sky, like all the other stars. They also had like an outer shell for the stars and whatnot because they didn't have these weird retrograde motions. So obviously because they weren't in the same solar system. So it was interesting. They had like a really weird, it's not weird, I mean, it was from their shoes, it made sense, as they were developing these theories and whatnot. I did not come across how Galileo Galilei debunked the epicycle and then theory that Ptolemy had. So I didn't look at that yet. I kind of wanted to see how he did it, because if they are able to completely debunk that theory, then there's no way in which that was the only explanation of the geocentric model that they had. So if that were debunked, then that means the only thing that could possibly be is that we live in a heliocentric system. So Copernicus had that idea, but when Galileo came by and he said that, no, this epicycle theory is completely wrong, and by logically deducing that, the only other possibility would have been the heliocentric model that Copernicus came up with. So they were deciphering that for years, until the scientific revolution, that is. But yeah, that's all I really did. And then I kind of like wrote diagrams just to see how they were thinking about those things back then. It's kind of interesting putting yourself in those people's shoes, because we take a lot of things for granted. We are given information in the educational system that is, a lot of people just take it, they use it as a form of trivia, but it's much deeper than that. This took centuries to deduce most of these theories that we take for granted. And in one day they give us this information and they expect us to just accept it as the truth. I don't really agree with that. I think we should really, as a scientific mind, or somewhat intelligent species, we should question these things more. We don't do enough of that, unfortunately. In the educational system, that's what they want you to believe. You get brainwashed into thinking that this is true. But as you've seen in history, the greatest minds come from questioning. We would have never made it this far if we didn't question things. And I think we should continue to do that. because, well, I mean, like, what else is there? The evolution of humanity, I feel like we shouldn't be stagnant. We need to keep questioning things, and that's the only way. Sure, I mean, sometimes I have these fantasies of going back to the primitive era where things were simple, but I don't think there's really any way back to that. I guess you can go to Somalia or Africa and live a simple life and whatnot, and not really question anything and be in the moment, but now I think we should have a proper balance of things when it comes to that. It makes me go crazy by questioning everything constantly. I lose my mind. I almost lost myself in the abyss again. It makes me depressed thinking about things too much. So you do have to be careful with that tool that we have in our heads. You really do. Because there are just some things we can't answer yet, at least. So when you go too far and you have all these questions that you can't quite answer yet, they sit there in your head and and what's behind that veil is complete and utter chaos because you don't know how to answer it. I almost fell into that through that veil of between structure and chaos. It's a little bit scary. That's why I tend to have bouts of psychosis and whatnot. But yeah, so it's a little bit, you have to be careful. And I'm finally creating those boundaries for myself. Should have done this long ago. It's been causing me a lot of anxiety for the past, ever since I've came into existence, really. I've always been an anxious person. I've always had all of these questions that nobody could answer for me. Nobody. Seems like most people just tend to take most things for granted. It's kind of sad to see. But at least I'm able to sit down with these thoughts and properly come up with an answer, or write it down and forget about it until maybe I have the tools to properly answer those questions. Because I don't want to think about it too much. If I do, I'm going to go back into the veil, the chaos. It's kind of not something you want, none in this world. I think there were a lot of people who fell for that, who thought too much about things that couldn't be answered yet. What's his name? Boltzmann, right? The one who created the laws of thermodynamics. He committed suicide because of these theories he created. He couldn't quite wrap his head around them, but he found them, the reasoning and logic, but he couldn't quite understand it. Now, I'm sure there's probably a reason. Maybe I don't know it. I don't know the exact reason why he killed himself, but there are a lot of people out there that go too far for our psyches to properly process. So you do have to be very careful about those things. I realize that I need to be careful too, because sometimes I go too far. And yeah, anyways, I think that'll do. I think this was a productive log as opposed to the one I had last night. I was awfully confused. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.